It's always fun to see what would happen if a hero was evil, and fighting games give us no shortage of that trope. Every now and then, an evil counterpart of one of the protagonists pops up on the main roster, either being an alternate version of the standard character or some sort of evil clone. This video will go over the best evil versions of not-so-evil characters that fighting games have brought us, which has been inspired by various viewer suggestions. In order to be considered, these evil characters have to be separate from the base characters on the roster, with either some unique moves in their moveset or have different properties to the same moves as their counterparts. So no evil sides that are only alternate costumes or characters that were evil in a later game due to the story's progression. These characters can be evil, partially brainwashed, or even reborn versions of the good character, as long as they still have enough aspects of their normal self. Or they can just be a nefarious clone, autonomous from the main character, yet still strongly connected to said character. Also, one character per series of origin. Now, let's take a look at my top 10 evil versions of fighting game characters. Number 10, Red Arcueid from Melty Blood, or is it pronounced Arcueid, or Arcueid? I'll just stick with Arcueid, you and your difficult name. This fighter starts the trend on this list of being a berserk version of a different character on the roster. She's the vampire Arcueid, but when her lust for blood makes her angry and sadistic. Normally, Arcueid never drinks blood in order to suppress her unbound vampiric self, but Red Arcueid shows up when she cannot control her urges for blood and indiscriminately drinks as much as she wants to unlock her true powers. Red Arcueid is a lot more vicious with her attacks than her counterpart is, even if she primarily uses the same animations as Arcueid. The main difference is Red Arcueid covers a larger range and different angles than Arcueid does, using her slashes and projectiles. However, she generally has a lower combo conversion rate off these hits as a trade-off. Aesthetically, her mannerisms are more vicious during these attacks, laughing and maniacally grinding her teeth as she fights, where Arcueid would normally just look serious, maybe a bit smug. And of course, you can't ignore those crazy red eyes to differentiate her from her less extreme counterpart, along with her shark teeth. Also, her hair gets close to Yu-Gi-Oh levels with how spiky it is, though it's not as pronounced in her sprites as it is in her artwork. Still, it's the hair that not even L'Oreal could tame. Number 9, Fukua from Skullgirls. Fukua is a joke, and I don't mean she's worthless or anything. I mean that she was put in the game as a gag to goof on Capcom for building up a mystery character reveal in Ultra Street Fighter 4, only for it to be Decapre. To be clear, Decapre was a fun character with unique elements, but she was built up by Capcom as being this unknown fighter whose presence was epic, only to ultimately be a character that mainly reused assets of Cammy. Essentially, she was a clone, so what did Skullgirls do? They made Fukua a literal clone of the character Philia, in moveset, backstory, and appearance, along with making a reveal trailer for her that was a parody of the Decapre reveal trailer. All her basic attacks use Philia's basic attacks, and her special attacks are unique moves that use other Philia animations. My favorite attack is called Forever a Clone, where she summons another Philia to attack for her.
We're gonna get you.
Despite being a joke released as DLC, the fans liked her enough where Lab Zero balanced her and made her a fixture of the roster because hey, more content. They threw together a backstory that the scientist Brain Drain combined 2 souls to create the clone since he liked Philia's worth as a fighter. However, the story we see is Fukua wants to replace Philia by defeating her and convincing herself that she's the real Philia now. After winning, she declares this and puts on a Philia mask, or just goes all Dwight on the CPR dummy with Philia's face.
Now I'm Philia.
It reminds me of how Robo-Kai wants to replace regular Kai in Guilty Gear, or that one girl who wanted to be Trixie in the Fairly Odd Parents. Most of Fukua's story happens in Philia's dream though, so we don't know if she's technically real, but if she is, she's definitely evil, since no benevolent person would frivolously waste toothpaste like that.
Toothpaste. What a waste of toothpaste.
Yeah, I'm still not letting that wicked act go unnoticed, Fukua.
This is fun. Guess we won.
Of course.
Number 8. Mew 12 from BlazBlue. This is the true form of Noelle Vermillion, one of the main characters who is staunchly on the side of good, taking part in various military activities against all the evil and dimension hopping going on in BlazBlue. However, she was once a robot cyborg woman who was designed only to kill. After the results of a war in her past life, she lost all of her memory and was adopted into a normal family, molding her into the Noelle we know today. Then the villain Terumi awakens his killing machine from Noelle's conscious, and she turns into the emotionless cyborg that only knows how to exterminate. She exchanges her guns for lasers and robot swords, or technically she exchanged her lasers and robot swords for guns and then exchanged the guns for the original weapons, but that's all pedantic at this point. Noelle and Mew are one of the few character counterpart duos to overcome the evil, with the evil side turning into a mere alternate form for Noelle that allows her to keep her kind personality thanks to magical anime plotlines. It was taken a step further when Mew was straight up separated from Noelle but still had all of Noelle's thoughts and feelings. So essentially now we just have two good versions of Noelle with vastly different fighting styles. Alright, I'm fine with it. Number 7. Pyrrha Omega from Soul Calibur. To preface this entry, it was initially going to be Nightmare as a counterpart to Siegfried, but after discussing them in my antagonist and protagonist videos, I've personally come to the conclusion that Nightmare functions as his own independent character in the grand scheme of things. To summarize, Siegfried's mind was completely overwritten by Nightmare after he took over his body. There was no semblance of Siegfried left at the time. It was all Nightmare all the time. Okay, well actually his moveset was heavily based on that of Siegfried's, but mentally Siegfried was gone at the time. He was beyond only being an evil clone or version of Siegfried. He was his own man. It's like K-Dash to Kyo in King of Fighters, but that's just a watered down version of my opinion. Pyrrha Omega, on the other hand, is a darker version of Pyrrha, corrupted by the wicked sword Soul Edge. Normal Pyrrha is a scared woman who only reluctantly fights because she's tricked into thinking the entire world is against her and wants to kill her. She's one of those characters that apologizes for stabbing you. Unfortunately, the sorries don't stop the external bleeding. Pyrrha Omega is her when the shard of Soul Edge that once saved her life by being put inside of her is brought to the forefront when the full Soul Edge sword is presented to her. She turns all glowy and red and gets this cool demon arm. Omega is not inherently evil like Nightmare was, since she's still the real Pyrrha deep down and just wants to live her life. But after being rejected by her disdainable brother for being malfested and manipulated by Soul Edge enthusiast Tira, she turns to Soul Edge as a source of comfort and trust that she'll never be abandoned. I certainly think this twitching eye seems reliable. I always preferred Omega's moveset since it had that extra kick to it. Pyrrha is uneasy with her body language when attacking, wanting to get away as soon as the attack is over. Omega, though, had an altered moveset that reflected her more aggressive nature. She now relishes that extra hit of her attacks instead of turning away, and I'll always love how she decks you right in the face for some moves. Her backstory may have been hindered by the disjointed story, but I look forward to seeing what the future has in store for Pyrrha Omega. Wait, Soul Calibur 6 rebooted the whole thing and erased her from existence for now. Well, now we bring you Omega's reaction to this revelation. Number 6. Noob Saibot from Mortal Kombat. Noob Saibot is Bi-Han, the original Sub-Zero, revived as a Wraith. After Bi-Han was killed by Scorpion, he was brought back to life by Necromancer Quan Chi, who he served with his new darker powers. He was now completely engulfed in shadows and abandoned his history as a cryomancer. He teamed up with a shadow man named Saibot and for some reason renamed himself Noob. The real life reason is because the names of him in the shadow are the last names of the creators of Mortal Kombat spelled backwards. Most other characters keep their same powers when Quan Chi revives them, but they're just evil now. Noob, though, got an entire makeover.
Recognize me, little brother.
As a fighter, overall he rebrands himself as that guy that fights with shadow men, since he's almost unrecognizable from his counterpart. The only thing he shares with his moveset from when he was Sub-Zero are the gibberish noises he makes during attacks. Oh, and he can play with portals now. Neat. Despite not being the nicest guy when he was Sub-Zero, he was still heroic to an extent, really only seen in Mortal Kombat mythology Sub-Zero, where all the evil deeds he did were just because he was being deceived by Quan Chi. Raiden even credits him as being a defender of the realm at one point because of this story arc.
An unfortunate end. He once defended Earthrealm from the Netherrealm armies of Shinnok and Quan Chi.
In the end, Bi-Han may have been lost to the shadows, but since his younger brother has done a fine job keeping the cryomancy alive, I'm fine with him specializing in his evil powers of evilness.
Noob Saibot wins.
Number 5. Rayra from Samurai Showdown. Samurai Showdown fleshed out 2 of its evil clones in the 5th game, Rasetsumaru, a demon that resembled Haomaru, and Rayra, the dark side of Nakoruru. I prefer the latter since earlier games did have evil Nakoruru as a secret character that was just a palette swap with no backstory, known as Purple Nakoruru. Yeah, they were a bit blunt with that name. The point is, we're getting character development with an established concept and a makeover. Nakoruru is a benevolent character who does not want to kill and is skittish about fighting in general. Her main motive to fight is any enemy that crosses her path during her search for her lost father, so she's not in this for the grandeur of victory. Though one day, the rage deep down inside of her was tired of all the fear and took over her body, changing her hairstyle and making her a more aggressive fighter. While Nakoruru is a fan of using birds in battle, Rayra employs the assistance of a wolf to help her with attacks. She'll jump on him to improve her mobility, range, and speed, plus he's a good boy, but don't pet him, he's very angry. When the dust clears in the Samurai Showdown 5 story, Rayra gets put back in Nakoruru's conscious, understanding that Nakoruru does not need to be this rage-filled fighter all the time. She still offers to help Nakoruru be assertive when she needs to be, and Rayra made this whole decision all by herself. That's probably the easiest way one of these conflicts has ever been resolved. Why can't everyone just peacefully shake hands with their antagonistic personality? Number 4. Shadow Labrys from Persona 4 Arena. Shadows exist in Persona as the manifestation of a character's fears, and when they're defeated, they become the character's personas. While the Shadows had minor differences from their counterparts in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, Shadow Labrys, who was introduced one game earlier in the first Persona 4 Arena, was the first playable Shadow, and unlike the other Shadows, she had a truly unique moveset. Partially. By that, I mean all of her attacks that did not utilize her persona were exactly the same as her counterparts' attacks, but her persona is a lot more evil than Labrys's. Labrys's persona works very gracefully with Labrys's moves, but Shadow Labrys uses this hellhound that is very different. It's slow but hits like a truck. You have to enter her persona's attack inputs far in advance of when you want to use them, since they have a lot of startup, but when you perfectly time the demon to hit after Shadow Labrys lays a beatdown, your opponent will be in a lot of pain. You get to hit them with giant punches, ground pounds, mega lasers. This beast has an assortment of moves that define brute force. The way this thing enters on screen tells you enough about how you're not in a friendly spar anymore. It also helps Shadow Labrys that when she wins, you feel like this dimension is screwed, since she plays up her maniacal nature pretty well, and her persona just causes destruction recklessly. And to drive in how nefarious this character is, her instant kill actually kills, where her beast drags her opponent to hell. Not sure what happens to you after you're caught, but it apparently reminds Shadow Labrys of something very funny, since she cannot stop laughing.
Labrys Shadow wins.
Number 3. Orochi Leona from King of Fighters, also known as Wild Leona. Orochi is a main villain from the King of Fighters series, whose evil influence has affected the bloodlines of some of the fighters on the rosters. When the Orochi manipulation takes hold of the fighters' bodies, they get an uncontrollable bloodlust and start killing for the sake of violence. The main one affected is Mr. Yagami over here, but he was always an antagonistic rival, so when he went all berserk, it was like when Akuma turned into Oni. I was like, oh, the this is fitting. Leona, though, was introduced as this stoic, serious fighter who was a noble member of the military, otherwise known as the Ikari Warriors, who are essentially the military of the world in SNK lore. So when Leona turned evil with the power of Orochi, it was a bigger surprise that she would transition from lawful good to chaotic evil in a snap. We learn that villain Gonitz, who was trying to summon Orochi, activated Leona's cursed blood when he discovered her in a village as a child, where she proceeded to murder everyone and then conveniently lost her memory. She was later adopted by Hydern, the commander of the Ikari Warriors, where she rediscovers Gonitz on her team's mission to stop him from unleashing Orochi, and then Gonitz was like, "Cool, I'll use you again," and then she proceeded to attack her own teammates with her new altered moveset. Not much changes with how the attacks look and act. She still uses bombs and military-style combat, but now she maniacally laughs during them since she's evil, except for those times when they wanted to save the sprite animation budget and did not change her facial expressions during these attacks. That being said, some of her attacks are now stronger or faster, so she has an advantage in battle, minus the whole losing her mind. I find the most interesting aspect of Orochi Leona versus regular Leona is her speed. She's wicked fast now, and her run puts her on all fours like a quadrupedal animal. Not only does it emphasize the wild nature of this form, but it also allows her to duck projectiles while still moving forward. It may be a small change to her playstyle, but it makes her rush down even deadlier than her blood-red hair. Number 2, Evil Ryu from Street Fighter. He wears his ambitions on his sleeve, or in his name. It's friendly old Ryu, only evil. Sir, if you had to describe yourself in 5 words, what would they be?
Violence is who I am.
Oh, I would have assumed evil is what you are. Thank you for mildly subverting my expectations.
I am now complete!
Now stop being crabby. This is an alternate version of Ryu if he gave in to the dark energy of the Satsui no Hado taking over his body. That energy engulfs the user in murderous intent, making their attacks more powerful and causing them to be more brutal with every hit, usually just at the expense of stamina and their sanity.
Death embrace away!
This is the same energy that Akuma uses, who has more control over his power due to his fighting experience, so he is more free-willed. On the other hand, Evil Ryu just goes around mindlessly killing things he doesn't like, and maybe a few things he does like. His moveset unsurprisingly combines Akuma and Ryu, giving him teleport glides and evil Hadokens alike, along with an axe kick, because who doesn't love a good axe kicking? And of course, he has a raging demon, because it's not worth selling your soul if you don't get one of those. The canon of Evil Ryu is questionable. When he flashes into dark energy mode, it's usually for a short period of time, retconned to have first appeared when he defeated Sagat in the first tournament, creating a Shoryuken so strong that it gave Sagat his chest scar. Later, this version of Ryu mainly came out when final bosses were trying to goad him into showing off his most powerful form for their own gain, only to be taught that the power of friendship keeps Ryu from succumbing to evil. Or maybe it's his own resolve, but I like my anime crap better. We eventually got Kage as the true personification of the Satsui no Hado, but I'll always prefer Evil Ryu to take on that duty. Let's list my stock of honorable mentions. Evil Cole from PlayStation All-Stars, he's like Cole but evil. Shadow Mewtwo from Pokken, he's like Mewtwo but shadowy. Violent Ken from SNK vs Capcom, he's like Ken but violent.
Violence.
Wild Yuri from King of Fighters, he's like Yuri but wild. Dark Samus in Super Smash Bros, she's like Samus but dark. This is fun.
This is fun.
Dark Pit in Super Smash Bros. I know he has significance in the Kid Icarus series, but regular Pit has so much personality that Dark Pit's edgy nature felt like a downgrade to me. However, my friend Professor Oates refers to him as Dork Pit, so I like this Pit for that reason. Oni from Street Fighter. As mentioned in the Leona segment, Akuma was more of an antagonistic neutral than evil, so when he went all Oni, I wasn't surprised, but it made me realize that at least Akuma has morals. Shadow Jago from Killer Instinct 2013. When the final bit of DLC was released, he got his own unique moveset, but even before that, when he was just an alternate costume for Jago, he was the best costume. Come on, skull skull mask. And Sunburned Sakura from Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. She's essentially Dark Sakura in the sense of evil Ryu, but her appearance and powers just look like the Dark Hado when really she fell asleep in the sun and got sunburned. So she's not crazy or evil at all. I love this parody. For number 1, I went with the character that had the best aspects of all the other entries. Simple as that. It's Devil Jin from Tekken, or is it pronounced Jean, like the Samurai Champloo character with the same name and spelling? I'll just call him Jin since that's how I learned it. Anyway, Devil Jin is Jin after he drinks a lot of Red Bull since that man definitely gets his wings. That's not his backstory. Devil Jin is an interesting character in both backstory and playstyle. His existence is a curse for Jin, since Jin is not an evil character. He gets caught up in the mess his family created, but his main goal is to destroy the devil gene that was passed on to him by his father, Kazuya. Kazuya wanted to take the bit of devil gene that woke up inside of him as a child and expand it so he could have his own ultimate devil powers. It rarely works in full for him, so Kazuya resents that his estranged son has full-blown devil powers that he doesn't even want. If only they could trade their fates. So Kazuya remedies this by holding Jin hostage and trying to take his devil powers for his own gain, and maybe kill Jin while he's at it. Then you have Jin's grandfather Heihachi, who has none of the devil gene but wants it for his own purposes, so now everything's a mess. The only family Jin can trust is his mom, June, who's MIA. So in the end, Jin's an angsty loner who will do anything to rid the devil from him, including release an ancient monster who could allegedly destroy the devil gene along with the world. Maybe he's gone too far at times to purify himself. When Devil Jin comes out, we get more than just an external struggle with a man and his literal demons. We get a clever moveset. Devil Jin's fighting style is a story-relevant way to put Jin's original fighting style from Tekken 3 in the game. Jin changed up his main moveset from Tekken 4 onwards to be more his own, rather than a mostly fusion of Kazuya's and Jun's moveset from Tekken 2 that Jin inherited in Tekken 3. It makes sense why he would go back to using some of Kazuya's moves when in full Devil Jin mode, since it's a fighting style that more resembles the man who passed on the devil gene to him, along with still being moves that Jin would use. Though the devil appearance is for more than just show, he takes flight to an extent in a few of his attacks. And he can shoot eye lasers, which is the main reason everyone should pick him up, right? Who needs tier lists when you can eye zap? Anyway, with his tragic backstory and variation on his good sides moveset, Devil Jin flies his way to the top of this list.
You win.
So what did you think of these choices? Agree? Disagree? Which characters that I discussed were your favorites, and which dark sides in fighting games need to be brought in the light a bit more? Let me know in the comments section. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.